Hey guys, so this is the first time I've ever shot a video quite like this one. Basically what I did on Twitter was say, hey guys, if you have a question for me, ask away. I'll pick 5 of them and throw a video together answering them in person. So without further ado, question 1 comes from Luffy Sand 12. Do you go through any special routines to try and stay relaxed throughout your day? Poker can be stressful. Well, there's definitely a few things that I do, actually, especially in the last year or two. One of those is meditation, guided meditation. I've got this like little DVD, not DVD, what do you call those things? iTunes thingy, where it's got like 5 different ones. One's for the morning, one's for the night, one's for like daytime stress. So let's say, for example, I'm in the middle of a tournament at the World Series and I had some bad things happen. I'll go to like a midday stress release, and essentially it's like you close your eyes, you listen to one of these things, you might just do something as simple as like, when you breathe, you breathe in, you're saying re, and then you're breathing out and you're going, relax. You do that for about 5 minutes with some other stuff. I also incorporated journaling into my life, where in the morning when I wake up, I just take a notepad and just scribble all kinds of thoughts that go through my head, whatever they may be. What's going on in my life, people that I haven't talked to in a while, and just remind myself, okay, you should reach out to this person. Say hello, it's been a while. So I think those things, as well as like delving into, I wouldn't say other people's problems, but I guess I'd call it being outwardly focused, connecting with people, and if I can help them in any way, that's a nice way to like alleviate any sort of idea that, you are the only grain of sand in this big world. It's important to sort of expand your mind sometimes and not be so like inwardly focused. The next question comes in from @VegasVin. He asks, what is the major change in poker, whether the style or the overall community, from when you started to today? Well, there's a few things. I'd say, obviously everybody knew each other back then. If you saw somebody at the table that you didn't know, you just assume the guy's a sucker because, if you hadn't seen him around Vegas, how could he ever get any good? He couldn't possibly play against the best because the best were always there. Since the advent of online poker, now a guy sits down at your table. I have no idea if he's played 5 million hands and won $10 million in the last 2 years. So there's that. Also, there's a different sort of like community vibe. In the old days, like I said, everyone knew each other. It was friendly in that regard. And I've noticed, I'd say in the last year, there's been a shift back towards that. A lot of the German kids and kids like Scott Seaver and a lot of the high rollers, when they go on these tours now, they get together. I had one of the most fun times at a tournament recently in Barcelona where there was about 20 or 30 of us on the beach, and we just threw together a soccer game, just an impromptu soccer game on the beach, and it was a lot of fun. The community vibe was back there, but, I'd say also today with poker community being wider in the sense that like now there's the online poker forums and people talking about it in different ways. Back then, there was just none of that. There wasn't many haters, I guess you could say. The next question comes in from my buddy Faraz Jaka. Faraz asks, what's your motivation that keeps you playing? What do you hope to get out of it, accomplish, desire? What keeps you going? That's a good question. I've always been competitive. I've always chosen things or anything I've done in my life, I've always wanted to be the best at it or the best I could be. And poker's obviously my form of competition these days. It's not the only thing that I do in terms of competition, but something I'm good at. And I'm motivated by staying atop the poker world. That's one of the most difficult things to do, is to get to a place in your life where you're, successful or one of the most successful, and then to stay there and to continue to, thrive. I've never wanted to be a has-been. I never wanted to be the guy that's like, oh yeah, that guy, he used to be good in 2004 or something like that. It was important to me to never be seen as a has-been. What do I get out of it? I mean, it satisfies my competitive urges. I certainly don't play for the money. I set goals every year. One of them is a career goal. I've got a legacy I think about sometimes, like there are lists that I want to be number 1 at. It's my video game. People play video games because they want to reach a certain level. Well, poker and my career, I look at it similar. Like there's level this, there's level that. And now, for example, you look at Phil Hellmuth, he's got 13 bracelets. Phil Ivey has 9, I've got 6. Okay, well, how do I got to get to level 7. I got to level 8, level 9. So for me, I enjoy it. It's fun. The travel can be actually Faraz, you travel like a crazy person. So nomad. If you don't know who Faraz Jaka is, this guy travels. He doesn't. Do you have a home yet? I don't know. You just go from place to place. Funnest. Every city he goes to is his new favorite city that he could live in, and he does for 2 weeks and then moves on. That's not the kind of life I can lead anymore, or I could. I just choose not to. I want to be more, stable. I'm a little older than that boy. So anyway, moving on to the next question. comes in from JNR Stepney. Simple question he asks, who's your toughest opponent? And I'd have to say that over the last few years, there's been one guy in particular. Obviously, Phil Ivey's the name that comes to mind is obviously one of the best. But I have such a rapport with him. We're good friends, and I have a good sense for his game and what he likes to do. But one guy who's been a thorn in my side, and it's been a combination of his great skill as well as him holding over me, and that's Scott Seaver. Both on the big game when we played for cash, and then we played in tournaments and stuff. He just seems to, often when I'm like trying to represent the nuts, he's got the nuts. That's not a good strategy. Aside from that, he's a really good player, super tough to play when you're out of position against Scott Seaver. I think he's one of the best tournament players in the world today. So, and a lot of the psychological sort of advantage he has is based on, history and that he's done so well against me. And I have the same against another great player who just won his second Alpha 8. Congratulations to Philip Grusom. But if you ask him, over the last 2 years or so, he's barely beaten me a pot. I've had really good success against him, and I think psychologically that gives me an advantage when I play in pots against him because he's already thinking, Daniel, you always have it. When do you ever miss a flop? So that's my Philip Grusom. Pretty weak, I know, whatever, not my best. But yeah, I'd say Scott Seaver is at the top of a short list right now. And the last question of the 5 comes from at JTT Hughes. He asks, can you explain your process for evaluating attorney structure? Yeah, well, obviously the first thing I look at is how long the levels are. That really tells a lot. It's the most relevant thing. If you're playing a tournament with 90-minute levels versus 60, you're just going to be a lot deeper later on in the event. The other most important thing I look at is the smoothness. For any weird numbers, like is there a 7-14? Is there a 9-18? We don't need stuff like that. Are the antes out of whack? You don't want to see tournaments with antes that are too low. So, for example, if, at the 8-1600 level, it's a $100 ante. That's problematic. It needs to be a $200 ante. The other big thing I look at is the smoothness of the structure and where they put the emphasis in terms of the amount of play that you need. Structures that put too much emphasis early on in the early stages, that really hurts the event later on. Because typically these events, they want to end them in about 25 to 30 levels, let's say the bigger ones especially. So if you're wasting about 7 or 8 levels playing 300 big blinds deep or 250 big blinds deep, you're usually going to suffer later in terms of the structure. So I like something that starts a little, I wouldn't say faster, but relevant. It actually creates more play. So for example, a lot of the high rollers, what we did was, and the World Series of Poker, we took the old structures and we started them at level 4, okay, and then just played those 4 levels over and over and over. Like you just played the same level 4 times. And I find that generally creates more meaningful play. Because if you start with 30,000 in chips and 50 and 100 blinds, you got 300 big blinds, right, with no ante. 90 minutes of that seems wasteful for me, and then, if you were to go to 75, 150 after that with no ante, I like an ante to jump in early. I like the play to be meaningful rather soon, especially for high rollers. I can totally understand how, like for lower limit events, people want play. They don't want to spend their $300 or $500 and be out in the first round. Where high roller players, 5,000 or above, I'd say they generally don't care about that. They're not there for like the experience. They're there to have a good structure and match their wits against the other geniuses in the world. So that's all 5. I think I'm going to do this every once in a while. Keep your questions coming in. Well, don't just keep them now because when I throw it out there on Twitter, then I'll pick questions from there and usually do about 5 because that makes for about a 7-8 minute video, and anything longer than that is just too much. So yeah, why am I telling you people this? Okay,